Hello, everyone, and welcome to this latest special Easter Sunday episode of Vox Vomitus. I am your host, Jennifer Ann Gordon, the author of From Daylight to Madness, When the Sleeping Dead Still Talk, Pretty Ugly, and the Japanese Box, and Other Stories. Joining me today, as always, is my Vox Vomitus vixen, Allison Martine Hubbard, author of The Bourbon Books, which includes Dibs Since September, Move on Melinda, Climb the Salmon Ladder, and Ranchers Take Manhattan. Once again, I took my inhaler before the show so I could yap all of that at once. We are joined today by Sarah Brooks, the author of The Cautious Traveller's Guide to the Wastelands, which I was obsessed. Allison was listening to the book and she was like, oh, I might have this author on my show. And I'm like, what are you listening to? And I was like, oh, that sounds so good. Let's have her on our show.
Yeah, she stole you from me, Sarah. I was going to have you on my, because this is Jennifer normally when it comes to like fantasy. She's like, do I have to? And so I do a separate show that's science fiction and fantasy. But as soon as I said trains, she's like, trains? So like a 4-year-old boy is like, trains? So is Jennifer. So this is why
it's exactly true. I'm like, I'll read anything that has a train in it.
Yeah,
everyone loves a train.
Yeah.
So this is how we got Sarah on this show. And I actually first heard of your book from a mutual friend, Frances White, author of The Voyage of the Damned. So, and I just put a "the" there where it doesn't belong. She'll kill me. Voyage of the Damned. There's no T there. And the two of you have done events and all this stuff. So it's like you guys have some kind of weird transportation league in the UK where there's ships and trains.
And the reason why we had Frances on our show was because I was like, a ship?
a ship? Well, I'm just wondering, do you guys have somebody who's doing like a Zeppelin or any other like sort of magical transportation set in a world that doesn't exist? Because I think we'd want that too. So if you know somebody, just let us know.
We really should. We only want to be friends with people who are writing books about transportation in some sort. So, you know, rockets, whatever.
Rockets?
We'll take it. Here we go. Like, rockets?
So, Sarah, welcome to Vox Vomitus. Tell our listeners and our viewers a little bit about yourself and then a little bit about your book.
Well, it's lovely to be on, to meet you all. So yeah, I'm a writer and an academic from Leeds in Yorkshire.
Academic? Now, Allison, she's smart.
so geeky in so many ways. So I work in
my love language. Keep going.
Oh, okay. Oh, great. I work in East Asian Studies at the University of Leeds, and but I'm a writer as well. So I've been writing for years and years and years. It's taken me a long time to have my first book published, which got published last year. But thank you. and I'm so excited to be talking to on a US podcast because despite the madness that's happening, the book started in Seattle.
You were telling us there where you learned that there are these things called donuts that apparently in the UK just are not nearly as big a thing because you guys have like scones and stuff. Scones, whatever you call them.
Yes,
they're not.
Yes,
we don't eat them the way we do here, and apparently
we have donuts, but you have donuts.
It's like in our blood. It's our country's spirit animal.
So in Seattle, not only I started a novel, various stories, and also ate a lot of donuts. But so that's it's really nice to be sort of talking to you now, and so the book started as a short story a long time ago, 2012. In Seattle, and it has finally become a book. So I have my prop. So this is the beautiful American cover. But I'm also
beautiful. So that's what I put on and did because I love the color scheme. But a lot of your media features the other cover, and is that the UK cover? Because I kind of love that more to the American designer, but I really love the UK one too.
I can't say anything. Well, yeah, I love them all. In fact, this is the paperback from the UK. So this is coming out on the 1st of May. So it's kind of different to the hardback, but I absolutely love it.
Do any of them feature a map? because Allison and I did the audio, and I was just thinking, I need a physical copy of this book, especially if it comes with a map.
It comes with a map of the train. So this is every fantasy writer's.
It's a diagram,
right?
Yes.
We want a map, and I was so happy to. It's just gorgeous. So yeah, all the different carriages. There's the engine. There's the kind of.
I love it.
Yeah, the Trans-Siberia Company. So yes, this was a dream come true.
See, now I'm glad that I currently don't have that, because I'll need to get the paperback, but as soon as my 9-year-old boy sees it, he will be like pulling those pages out and taking them and putting them as part of his train set. So I'll have to like fight to keep it away from him, because he kind of likes the train. Like, it's not his biggest obsession lately, but it's one that just keeps coming back. So
it's a classic.
It is a classic.
Yeah. Has he read this? There's this amazing series of books called Adventures on Trains by M.G. Leonard and Sam Sedgman. They're so good. I think there's American versions as well. And yeah, they've got train maps at the beginning, and they're all about a young lad who travels on a train with his travel writer uncle and solves crimes. And they're just fantastic. So yeah, Adventures on Trains.
Are these for children or for grown-ups?
They're for children, but grown-ups can enjoy them as well.
I want to read them anyway.
I know. I was like, that's right up my alley.
So good.
Crimes, a train.
So tell us, okay, so I don't know, we've had probably one author who can beat how long it went from story conception to here's the actual book, because wasn't it Deborah Shepherd who brought out the box of her book?
Yes, because she had started it like 40 years before.
It was like in her shelf in her closet for like 2 husbands and 5 houses or something like that. I'm probably exaggerating a little bit, but it took a long time for her to go from the story of her dream to here's the actual physical book, and I'm holding it in my hands. Yours, that's still like a dozen years. That's nothing to sniff at. And it started with donuts in Seattle. So what were you doing in Seattle?
Yeah, how did the donuts translate to the train? How did the donuts and the wasteland, like, how does that connect?
My writing is fueled by sugar.
Seattle is really not the wasteland. Seattle's pretty awesome. So, like, nobody think that Sarah is suggesting that Seattle is the wasteland. It's called the Trans-Siberian, not Trans-Seattle. So just clarifying that.
Absolutely nothing against Seattle. Seattle is amazing. But yeah, so it has an incredible science fiction and fantasy writers workshop. So Clarion West is based in Seattle. There's Clarion in San Diego as well. So yeah, in 2012, I went to the workshop. It's this amazing, 6-week workshop. And every week they get a different author to come and kind of tutor the group. So there's like 18 of us plus an author.
That is a dream.
That is so amazing.
It's incredible. And they get amazing people. So we had Connie Willis, Stephen Graham Jones, Kelly Link. I know. And the week that the story that I wrote that became this novel was George R.R. Martin, which was pretty amazing. And
a little known author named George R.R. Martin.
I mean, now we know why he's not writing his books. He's too busy doing workshops for Sarah, and we'll forgive him for that. But we did
ask him. We did say, George, we are incredibly grateful for you being here, but why are you here?
Shouldn't you be doing something else right now?
You have a deadline. But he was so lovely, and he said that because by the time he became really, really kind of well known and successful, he was a bit older, and that a lot of the people who helped him when he was kind of coming up were no longer with us. So he wanted to kind of pay it forward and to help kind of up and coming writers. So yeah, he gave up his time, gave up a week and a huge amount of time actually to read our work. It was all short stories, and to critique it. It was meant to last the morning critiquing session was meant to just last a few hours and then be finished by lunch. No, George's week, we did not finish by lunch. We kept going, and then we came back after lunch, and he went through page by page and gave the most incredibly detailed feedback. It was amazing.
So now we aren't even allowed to be mad at him for taking so long, because he's using his time doing good stuff.
Yeah. Yes, exactly.
I'm sure he was probably pretty happy about the donuts too. I don't know if the authors were like, donuts, if they were brought.
We'll buy you.
I'm thinking that probably had less for him than the whole idea of, hey, paying it forward and the people I learned from, because I know a little bit about his background, that he was writing in TV, like he used to write for Beauty and the Beast, and he's done short stories in these collections and all that. So yeah, the thing that put him on the map for most people was Game of Thrones, but that was by no means like breakout success where he just showed about it. And it's like, no, this man's been writing for his whole life, and now we all know about it thanks to HBO, and we're just not going to talk about that last season. Just not.
Exactly.
Did not happen. So how did you go? So you were you working on the same short stories this whole time, and then they come together to form this story? Like, maybe tell us a little bit about this book. Besides, everyone right now knows Trans-Siberia, and Jen and I have a thing with trains. So tell us a little bit about this train and what's different about it. And it doesn't go to Hogwarts, just to clarify. None of that.
It does not. So so it is based on the real Trans-Siberian Express and a journey I took on it along an even longer time ago, which we can maybe talk about. I don't do anything fast. So yes, in the book is a historical fantasy. So it's set at the end of an alternative 19th century, where the only way to cross the Wastelands, which is what used to be Mongolia and Siberia, is by armored train. But something has been sort of increasingly becoming even stranger. So the Wastelands is this sort of land of changes. It's, the people have sort of been pushed out by the strange changes and the strange kind of flora and fauna there. Nobody quite knows exactly what's happened.
I love that.
Yes, but the train, but being humans, people have wanted to find a way across the Wastelands despite the danger. So the Trans-Siberia Company has sort of set up this train, built this railway, and so the train goes across, but it is extremely dangerous. Passengers have to sign a waiver before they get on the train to sort of absolve the company,
like in case they go mad.
They go mad, yes, because the Wastelands is so strange that even looking out of the window for too long can drive some people mad. But despite the dangers, of course, people still want to travel on the train, some of them because they have to, those in third class, for example, but there's plenty of those in first class who are sort of, 19th century sort of posh travelers who want to take the train because of bragging rights, basically.
Exactly.
Yeah. Like, I loved the Titanic vibes this entire book was giving me too, because Titanic is my other, like, if you think I'm excited about trains, I'm even more excited about anything Titanic-y. So
a ship sinks, Jennifer signs on right away because she likes drowning girls.
She's there.
That's kind of her other thing.
I've got like a few things that I'm like,
yep. That whole ship drowned? Yes, let's have that. And we had Alma Katsu on with her Titanic one. What was that one called?
It's called The Deep.
The Deep, yeah. So we were super excited. We're like, sink that ship. We know what's happening, but we need to see the ship sink again. And so with a train, obviously a train does not sink, but other things can go wrong, and other people get blamed for things going wrong. And you have this amazing cast of characters. And it was funny because Jennifer and I, there were a couple characters that, because you refer to people mostly by title, we were like, is this person the same as this person?
I know, I'm like, is the cartographer the same as the professor? Is the
Whereas I thought the naturalist and the professor, because those two things to me in my head, like, well, a professor probably could be a naturalist and a naturalist could be a professor. Separate people. But, it's one of those things where you're like figuring out, like, who is this? And it almost had that kind of Clue feeling where people have roles as much as they have their actual names. And you have the child of the train, who I absolutely adored, and we messed up her name 20 times too.
Yeah, and how do you say her name?
I think you said it right earlier. So Wei is the
okay.
The child of the train. So yeah,
I just wanted to make sure I was saying Wei's name right, because I loved her.
Oh.
We both loved her, but like we said, we listened to the audio, and as we've said before, sometimes the audio narrator has a different approach to how certain names should be than what the author had in mind. So we're like, is this what you meant? Because this is what we heard. So, and for the
it sounds like that was perfect.
Your narrator,
there's a lot of characters, and they're different nationalities. So she's Chinese, and then the other character, Maria, is Russian. We have a Brit, the kind of Henry Gray, the scientist, but then we also Suzuki is Japanese. So there was all these names, and this caused all sorts of issues, and trying to kind of give pronunciations to the audio people. So.
So how much research did you have to do? Okay, so you've been on this train ride.
The train.
I know. So like you've got that, which again I love. So in my book, Pretty Ugly, there is a train ride across Italy, and that was based on me and my partner taking a train ride, that exact one across Italy.
But there was not an apocalyptic plague during the time
you guys rode, just for the record.
No, there is one in her book. There's not one there.
Yeah, and there were no dead bodies on the train when I was on it.
That you know of.
we want the nice train journeys, and then we can write about the disaster.
I know, that's like, how about we take this wonderful memory and make it awful?
I just love it. I can just imagine all these authors going on different things and experiencing new places, and everybody else is looking at it with an eye for wonder, but the authors are like, how can I make this wrong? Like, what can I take and go, ooh, that could go really bad? Takes a note. You know?
Exactly. The what if, right? Like, you just can't help it. And then
like,
you start
what about your trip made you go, I would go mad if I was on this too long?
Yeah. Like, what if I looked outside and there was a monster there? You know, like...
yeah, you joke, but yeah, I mean, it was an amazing. So this was even longer. So you can, obviously, I wasn't thinking about it as a novel at this point, but this was about 25 years ago when I was a student, and I'd been studying in Beijing, and then with a couple of friends, we decided we would come back to the UK overland because that's what you do when you're 19 and stupid, and
you have the time that you can do it. No,
yeah, exactly, and you do it as cheaply as possible as well. So we went to Mongolia first and spent a couple of weeks there, and then got the train from Ulaanbaatar to Moscow. And because we were doing it as cheaply as possible, we basically had to get a ticket that was just a straight through ticket, because at the time it was really complicated to get visas. Strangely enough, now
things are coming full circle.
but yeah, it's difficult to get visas and difficult to sort of. You had to go through a travel agency basically and pay lots of money if you wanted to kind of be able to get off and see Lake Baikal and go to all these different places. So we thought, we're just going to get the cheap ticket, stay on the train for 5 nights, and I think if you're on a train for 5 nights, things start going, feeling a little bit weird, like whatever happens. And it was me and 2 friends, and everybody else was from Mongolia, and it was the kind of the most basic. So we had a cabin. But it was not the kind of fancy Orient Express train that I would like to be traveling on, but yeah, it was amazing. So we didn't, we kind of couldn't really communicate with each other very well, but they would kind of be giving us vodka and food, and we kind of got to know each other, but we also just spent a long time kind of staring out of the window and at Russia or Siberia, and there was a lot of Russia.
It's not a small country.
It's not. It's just hours and hours and hours of sort of grasslands and then trees, and you sort of start seeing things after a while, like especially in the trees. You really start seeing faces there. You're like, oh, is something watching me back? And at the time I was like, oh, what if something's watching me back? Then didn't think about it. But then years and years later, and sort of one needing to come up with a story at very short notice because, there's 17 other writers and George R. R. Martin.
That's not the time to have no ideas.
Oh my God, what do I write about? And this train journey, just sort of this memory, a vivid memory. I think when you're 19 as well, like it's just, you kind of remember things very, very vividly at that age, I think.
Mm-hmm. We can't remember what happened last week, but I can guarantee you I have very vivid memories of the time I was like with a boyfriend in a car trip for 3 months. Like I remember all of that.
Like every moment.
Terrible.
Well, I think that's also those times when we have those more kind of unusual experiences, whereas if we go a little longer, like, yes, maybe we traveled, maybe we did things, but we may not have had those kind of, this was the weirdest trip I've taken, or this was one that I'm never going to have another journey like this one, even if you have other travels and other vacations or other places. Like for me, that like my equivalent was when I was in Brazil between my junior and senior year of high school. And when I was doing that, it's like, yeah, I was in the rainforest for 2 weeks. That's something, just it's not something I'm ever going to get to do again.
Yeah, exactly. I'm glad I kind of did all that traveling and the sort of backpackery, you know, staying in grotty hostels kind of traveling, because now I want comfort. And, you know, I did not want to be in a train for 5 days without any showers at all. At the time, I was like, I don't care if I'm smelly.
Yeah. I know, like when you're 19, you do go on those trips where you're just like, I'm going to sleep on the ground and like I haven't showered in days and I'm cool.
This is the authentic experience.
Yeah. Now it's just like I need a beautiful shower. I need like a lot of lotions.
My low back,
tons of hair product.
Yeah, my sciatica just said no to the sleeping on the ground part. So just no. So tell us more about, like, when you go there, did you know in advance you would be doing short stories, or did they just not tell you what you'd be working on, and they just kind of start throwing stuff at you and said, write some words?
Yeah, no, Clarion is definitely, so you are prepared. So it's definitely a short story writing workshop. And yeah, it's been running for years. It's an absolutely incredible workshop. So if you're writing science fiction and fantasy, Clarion West or Clarion in San Diego are such fantastic places to go. So I didn't know that, you know, we were going to have to write a story a week for 6 weeks. But I somehow kind of, and I, you know, thought, oh, it's fine. I'll just turn up and think of something on the spot. Which I don't know.
Last words. No, don't do that.
But actually, I think it was quite a good approach, because I had no idea where this, I hadn't thought, you know, this was going to be what I wrote about. And so, yes, I wrote this story. And then wrote, you know, 5 other stories as well, amazingly, because I'm a very, very slow writer usually. But, you know, when you've got a kind of deadline like that and everyone's staying up until 2 a.m. and it's just what we're doing, you know, it was great. I wrote loads and then didn't write anything for about 6 months afterwards.
All your words were vomited out as Vox All you were empty to be emptied. There you go.
Exactly. But the other thing that the workshop did was kind of show me there's this whole you know, ecosystem of science fiction and fantasy writers and magazines and journals and conventions and things, which I hadn't really known about very well. And, you know, so I hadn't been submitting short stories before then, but after I got back, I started kind of more seriously, you know, submitting short stories to magazines, getting loads and loads and loads of rejections, and then the occasional acceptance, which was like the biggest thing ever. And this story was accepted in Interzone, which is a UK fantasy and science fiction magazine, you know, which has published all sorts of people in the past, you know, so that was a really big deal. So I kind of got it published in that, and I was like, yes. And then just sort of put it aside and was like, oh, you know, that's really great. I'm glad I've got that done, and now I'm going to write other things. But then somehow just kept kind of coming back to the story and thinking about it, and just kind of writing little notes to myself and filling up notebooks. And by the time I sort of realized it, I was like, oh, I filled up a lot of notebooks actually. Years later.
Maybe it's not a short story at all. Maybe it's a novel. Yeah. And it's quite a novel. And it's like an epic. You have a huge cast. It's like, I can't imagine this is a short story.
Me neither. I was going to ask, where was the short story in this? Or like, did it focus on just 1 or 2 characters or 1 or 2 elements of this?
Yeah, it had far fewer characters, but it was kind of the same. I mean, it was the same structure. So they got on the train in Beijing, and in the short story, they got off the train in Moscow. And it was kind of similar ideas. So I also had the travel guide. So the Cautious Traveller's Guide to the Wastelands, you know, is the book within a book. Yeah, it was little quotes from that as well. So it really does, you know, it's kind of a very similar structure, but then it definitely grew to become a novel.
Well, and I'm always a fan of like the book within a book kind of idea, even when it's an imagined book. Like sometimes you see it and there's one where someone's quoting some real thing or some real, I recently read a book where famous horror directors, Jen's read this one too, like the famous horror directors are being quoted at the beginning of different chapters. But I love that you had like, this is the actual guide that they're all referencing that's telling people how to get through this place that is dangerous, but intriguing and mysterious. And nobody quite knows like, well, why is it happening? And why is whatever's happening more? So it's like, we don't fully understand it, but whatever it is definitely turning up the intensity spot.
Exactly, and I love a travel guide as well, and also sort of Victorian and Edwardian travel guides are hilarious. So they're so great. There's all these, and they're basically all about kind of telling Victorian travellers, you know, where to go to sort of to avoid as much foreignness as possible. You know, hotel, it serves good British food, and you know, like this is a comfortable train, etc. So I kind of imagined, you know, what would that kind of novel of travel guide be for a train that is so dangerous, you know. So it's quite fun to think about that.
Yeah, those were really great parts, and I loved how politely it was written, just like about, like, you know, about the wastelands, about like the horrors, and it's like, well, you know,
you should be careful.
You should be careful when, like, looking outside. It's like, oh, but like talking about really bleak things.
Well, and I love how they have all these precautions in place, because it's not just like, oh, something could go wrong. They kind of expect it to. So everybody has like, ooh, you've been staring out the window too long. Are you all right? Like, people know to check in on each other with that. So I love how that's something where everybody kind of acknowledges this is a problem, but they do it anyway, either because they have to or because they want to. And that people are like, well, we're on the train here, so we're going to keep doing it. And let me just say, I know both Jennifer and I love the Wei, the child of the train, who literally is like, she's born on the train and just stays there her whole life. I'm like, that is amazing. And yet you're like, how could that? Nope, it does actually make sense. So she's the most connected to the train and the railway, and the idea of, okay, if you're off the rail, then you don't feel it, because it's like you got the rail legs the same way, you know, sailors have their sea legs, and then you're walking funny. You're like, oh, I'm out of the boat anymore. Why is nothing's moving? It's just you. Oh, but I feel weird. Nope, that's the ground. I don't like it.
Yeah, exactly. And she was the big thing, that she was very different to the short story. So I think when I kind of got her, I was like, oh, this could be a novel, because, you know, I mean, I love children's literature and love all these stories. You used to read, you know, about plucky orphans who kind of grow up in some unusual place, you know, Gothic castle or whatever. So I really like the idea of this girl who was basically, she's kind of adopted by the whole train, and just spends her life growing up and kind of, you know, learns whatever the passengers teach her or the crew teaches her. And, you know, and that idea is so nice, I think. But then, of course, you know, there has to be a plot. And so, yes, sort of over the
there
course
has to be a plot.
Unfortunately,
that's not very literary of you.
Huh. I was like, I should write that down and remind myself of it every day.
I need to remind myself that there has to be a plot, not just vibes. But yes,
you know,
her nice life on the train does go wrong. Things do sort of start to happen to make her doubt, you know, is this such a good you know, a good place to be? Can I trust the Trans-Siberia Company, and so on.
Well, and I was gonna say, with the whole idea of all plot, no vibes, no, but not no vibes, not all vibes, no plot. And yours definitely has a very strong plot, but it does. Those vibes are so strong at the beginning that you never lose them, and they get more intense in places and shifts in places. And it was fun, because I was ahead of. I finished it, so I was like hearing Jennifer's speculations, like, I think this. I'm like, okay, keep reading, because there are other characters, and there's the interaction between them, and things that go wrong, and different people with different motives. So believe me, anybody who's like, oh, a book on a train where nothing happens, like, no, nothing happens when you're on the real train and you're looking out, but stuff happens on this one because it was written by a writer who did put a plot in there, so you're good. Like, that wasn't the thing. But Jennifer and I, in our own writing, sometimes forget we were supposed to put plots in things at points.
Plotting is so hard.
Why? It is. I'm like, why does something have to happen? Can't my characters just kind of wander around, feeling their feelings, having like quirky conversations?
You know, and I just finished a book. I won't say which one, but I read some of the reviews that are like, nothing happens. No, really, nothing happens. And people weren't happy about that, but other people were. So, you know, it's kind of to each their own whether you want to include a plot. Otherwise,
I feel like if the characters are strong enough and the vibes are strong enough, like I'll read interesting, well-developed characters just like doing their laundry. I don't like, I'm not really there for the plot. I'm there for the vibes.
Okay.
The plot is bonus.
Yeah. Well, and I kind of agree in the fact that for me, I don't care what the plot is if I'm not invested in who it's happening to.
Yeah.
So I think that's kind of where it goes. And one of the things that you set up so well with those characters and with those vibes is that I don't know where they've shelved this, because since I heard about it from someone who read it, I wasn't looking for it on a shelf. Do you call this, is it just speculative? Is it, you said it's alternative history fiction. So, I mean, that's a place in speculative, but I know that I saw a couple of reviews of yours where people were like, we aren't sure where this goes because it goes darker and weirder than you first see coming, which personally I love.
Yeah.
But then that gets it kind of hard to be like, oh, it's this fantasy train. It's like, maybe not that.
It's not the Polar Express.
No, that's creepy in its own way with the people and they're not people, and that's not Tom Hanks. That's some ungodly horrible thing. Make it stop. But there's hot cocoa involved. I'd be there for that. But other than that, no.
It's funny. So I mean, I call it historical fantasy. I always say I'm a fantasy writer. You know, I've come out of a lot of my friends, Francis White and co. We have a little kind of northern fantasists
society,
little people who've friends who've published books last year, and we all write fantasy of different sorts. So I would call it fantasy, but but it
has like a toe dipped in horror, definitely.
And I love sort of genre bending, whatever. I like horror. I like literary fiction as well. I like classical fiction. So I read, sort of grew up reading a lot of 19th century, very kind of realist fiction. So I think it's a little bit of everything, a bit steampunky, I suppose. As well.
There was a train. I mean, like whenever steampunk people hear the word train, their little ears perk up and go, trains? Because the engines and the gears.
I almost wore my steampunk outfit today, but then
you do have one.
I have multiple.
Once I know, and there was a cosplay element involved in this, so I was prepared.
And like one of the elements I love, and okay, as a white person, I have a hard time saying this because I want to make it very clear, like where I like this stuff and where I go, this was a real big problem. The colonialist era has a lot of things that are very, very not good, but the whole like the line between naturalists and like people had their little, we didn't have full museums yet. So people are like, I have my private little cabinet of curiosities. And it's just weird shit that rich people collected. I love that vibe. But it's also like, these are things we stole from indigenous people and tribes and that, we didn't take, we just killed. So that's the bad part.
That's the bad part. But a shelf filled with like with
weird stuff.
Jars of things. Yes. Love it.
Where someone's like, it's a pickled dead creature. Ooh. That kind of stuff I love. So you have the character who's like the naturalist, and I love because at that era science was very different than when science is now in terms
of science.
Well, exactly. And still like the whole line between when was an alchemist no longer considered real science? Well, was it ever? Well, I don't really know, but that whole line between fantasy and science, I kind of am this person who I like to say fantasy science fiction together because that line to me is very, well, as Doctor Who says, wibbly wobbly, timey-wimey. It's all just kind of, because there's no science in Doctor Who, but it's science fiction. No, it's not. It's fantasy, but you're in a box. So have fun. Like there's science there. And I love that. And I love how your book pulls all that stuff together because there's like that feeling of, well, yes, there's science because we're studying these things, but are we going to understand them? Like, that's not the important part, is it? It's the feelings and the feeling of exploring and finding something new. And so many of your characters embrace that, whether it's maps changing and like the idea of trying to map this place and is the world around us changing and how do we reflect that? I just love that. And I love that you brought all that in. Do the maps change in your book? That would be really awesome if the paperback can do that.
Oh my God. And if you could like move it and they would
like a hologram, like you see it as a kid and you move it, like, ooh, this way, that way, this way, that way.
Okay, I'll talk to marketing. We've missed a trick here.
Get somebody on the phone. Stop.
Exactly.
We need a special edition with a change in map in it.
Do you know they have those heat change mugs where if you pour it in and then it changes, like, ooh, if it appeared, ooh, and like things appear outside. Okay, I don't know how to make any of that. I have ideas and no way to make any of them happen, but you poured it in and like stuff appeared outside the window and it's like, ooh, what is that?
Amazing. Oh, yes. Oh, I'm now very sad that we do not have this.
Sorry, Sarah.
Lisa,
She's like, I was feeling really good about the book, and now
I was like, it's so pretty and beautiful. Now, oh wait, it doesn't
actually it's boring and it sucks. There's only a map.
No,
There's only a diagram.
But yours has all the beautiful details, which we love in one way. But my brain goes, how can we make this weirder? So that's why I'm like, can we make it embrace the weird things that happen in your book? Because I want to see that happen.
That would be amazing. Because the weird things are sort of so much fun to write about. But yeah, I mean, I know what you mean about the kind of there's something so nice about the idea of collecting and having these things and studying the weirdness. But yeah, I mean, Henry Gray, the naturalist, is one of the kind of the main characters is absolutely based on these sort of, the 19th century naturalist who often were, like clergymen and stuff. So they were amateurs, so all these sort of curates and vicars, in little vicarages around the country, doing their, giving their sermons and then going and, doing sort of scientific research. But of course, a lot of them, they had this weird, there was sort of complicated understandings of science and religion, and so that was kind of fun to play. I was, really wanting to play with that, the ideas of what is science and religion and the strange and the sort of the magical and the very kind of blurred boundaries between that, as well as I think it's not particularly subtle in the book, but the kind of, the British Empire kind of colonial idea of, yes, we will go somewhere and we will take their stuff, and we will kick people out, and yes, and then we will take it back and study it and say, oh well, these ideas come from the British Empire or whatever. Actually, they've obviously from somewhere else. So that was very much sort of in the background there. Because British history is just full of all sorts of interesting
white dudes stealing stuff. Yeah, that's what that is, and not because everything's always about food, except for me, it really always is. That when I've been to Britain just once, and I loved how all the places that like people have moved there from have brought their good food with them, so you don't have to just eat British food anymore. So that's really very nice that people are like, here, let's bring you things with flavors.
Yeah. I mean, every time I travel, I feel like people are always like, oh, what kind of food did you eat? And my partner and I are always like, well, we ate Indian food. We eat Indian food everywhere. Hungary, Iceland, Latvia, Indian food.
Still Indian food. Like, well, that also, just to clarify, because Jennifer and her husband are vegetarians, it's a lot easier to always find things that are vegetarian friendly on certain kinds of cuisines. They're like, exactly. Probably not the barbecue place in Texas. Like, golly. There. Like, can I have a baked potato with bacon? No, just the potato, please.
So, Sarah, what are you working on now? Do you have another book coming out? Because this one came out last year.
Yes.
It's new to us, but it's been out for a while.
Yes. And the advice that people give you, when your first book comes out, they say, oh, just make sure, you try and make sure your second book is written or almost written by the time your first book comes out. That's really good advice. I wish I'd followed it. I did not follow it. So my second book is in the process of being written, but it is not written yet. But yes, so I'm working on that. It's another historical fantasy, but this time set in England, so in the 18th century, and on the North Yorkshire coast. Mostly. So I'm in West Yorkshire in Leeds, but we have this beautiful coastline of North Yorkshire, which is these kind of fantastic cliffs and amazing bird life.
Will there be drowning? Is anybody drowning in this?
I'm slightly alarmed by the question, but yes, there absolutely will be. In fact,
is there a lighthouse?
There is. Yes, just all the kind of sea novel tick list. There is a lighthouse. There's also a drowned city. So North Yorkshire has Yorkshire Atlantis, apparently. So there's this sort of ancient medieval town that was drowned in a storm in the 1300s or something. So this is real. So it's kind of there somewhere, off the North Yorkshire coast, but people don't quite know where it is. But yeah, this is going to be part of the novel. So the entire town is drowned. And there is indeed
girl, Jennifer.
Love it. Sarah,
Jennifer's a horror writer here.
I am a horror writer. I'm not just like a run-of-the-mill weirdo.
You're allowed to ask these questions if you're a horror writer. It's fine.
Well, and I was going to ask, does this come from one of the other stories that you wrote while you were at the Clarion conference, or did any of those other stories either make it into this book, or have some of them come back out and pop their little heads up like a little groundhog and gone, hey, what about me? I'll be a novel.
Please write me. Yeah, I would like to. So some of them have been published in various places as short stories, and there are a couple that I'd like to come back to, definitely. But this one is different. So yeah. So it's another. I mean, even though I kind of feel maybe I should just do a whole series of transport novels, seeing as this one is, there are ships involved, but it's mostly kind of on the coast rather than on the sea.
Like, how do you feel about those zeppelins I was talking about? Zeppelin fiction.
It's the next big thing.
Yeah. Sarah, you've been great. Thank you so much for being with us today. Everybody, make sure you buy this book, listen to it, whatever, consume it in whichever way.
You showed us the UK paperback. Are we getting an American paperback at some point, or are we still needing to buy a hardback or audio?
Yes, there will be a paperback, but I meant to look at when it's coming out and I completely forgot. So it's a different cover. So the cover is really beautiful, the paperback, but it's very green still, but it is different. But yes, so I'm not quite sure about that.
It's very, very exciting. We love this book. We loved Weiwei. We loved and now I'm really bummed that I'm not wearing a steampunk outfit right now, but
I have a crush on the cartographer.
Oh yeah. Oh, good. That was what was meant to happen.
Oh, good. Okay.
Good.
I just thought that happens sometimes. Where like you're supposed to like that character, Alice. I'm like,
like that was the villain. No.
He's a goodie.
So we are actually going to be back with a new episode of Vox Vomitus on this Wednesday. We were on a little hiatus for a while, but we have Nancy Bilyeu coming back to the show with her new book, The Versailles Formula. I was like, I blanked out immediately.
I know the word somewhere, and it's more historical fiction, but I'm pretty sure there's no it's not speculative.
It's not speculative, but I think there's Gothic elements in this one that are very cool. And then the following week, we will have Craig DeLuey on our show talking about his book, How to Make a Horror Movie and Survive. So we have...
survive, isn't it? The surviving part?
The surviving part's the hardest part. So stay tuned for those. And again, Sarah, thank you for being with us.
Thank you so much. It's been so lovely to talk to you.
Bye.
Hi, everybody.
Bye.